Lecture 2: Panic Attacks and Agoraphobia. What is a panic attack? Panic attack is simply fear. Physiologically, panic attacks and fear are the same. They both activate our survival instincts. The only difference between them is that during a panic attack, fear is directed inwardly. Inwardly directed means that a person focuses on fears associated with functioning of his body and mind. One of the most common responses of survival instinct is fight or flight response. Fight or flight is biologically adaptive response formed in order to help us survive. During that response, your body releases adrenaline and adjusts part of your body to escape a threatening situation or fight for survival. There is also third, less common reaction, freeze, but it's extremely rare. Why panic attacks are harmless? It's highly important to understand that during a fight or flight response, your body mobilizes for survival, which literally means that during a panic attack, your body is biologically at a very safe state. The only threat present is one created and perpetuated by your own anxious brain. Panic attacks cannot exist in the present. They are triggered by catastrophic interpretation of past events and fueled by expectations of catastrophic future. Therefore, a person with panic attacks is always stuck in his thoughts, perpetuating different kinds of what-if thoughts and scenarios like, what if it kills me, or what if it's a heart attack? Once again, it's important to note that all the what-if thoughts are inwardly directed. How long does a panic attack last? Panic attacks could last anywhere from 3 to 40 minutes. Even though it could vary from person to person, but on average, one panic attack lasts between 3 to 5 minutes, which is the time it takes for adrenaline to run through your veins. Once it's over, you can either have a series of panic attacks by fueling your mind with more anxious thoughts, or shift your attention to something else and stop at one panic attack as your mind and body mobilize. It should be noted that both single and a series of panic attacks are equally safe to your mind and body. Despite the severity, eventually your body will go back to norm because it cannot self-destruct itself. Your body cannot kill itself. Try to hold your breath. You won't be able to suffocate yourself because your body will force you to breathe out. Your body is not programmed to self-destruct itself unless there is a conscious decision to do so. But even when someone consciously decides to hang himself, once that person kicks chair from under his feet, he immediately instinctively tries to ease the rope on his neck because survival instinct is the foundational program of human body. Therefore, it's vitally important to understand that your body can never produce deadly amount of adrenaline. Based on our last lecture, every pressing of the gas pedal is always followed by the brake pedal. What causes panic attacks? There are three main reasons that lead to panic attacks. First, mental exhaustion. Mental exhaustion is when you overwhelm your brain with work and study. It's hard to notice the signs of exhaustion when you are in the process, which is why you may be surprised when you suddenly feel bursts of energy in the form of a panic attack. Second, physical exhaustion. Physical exhaustion is when you overwhelm your body with a lot of physical labor, unstructured intense workouts, irregular sleep schedule, substance abuse like alcohol, drugs, or caffeine. Third, emotional exhaustion. Emotional exhaustion is when you undergo an emotionally intense period in your life like death of a loved one, divorce, breakup, or injury. When you go through one or more of these exhaustions in your life, you'll start noticing symptoms. As you start getting concerned with your symptoms, your anxiety level goes higher and higher. Since you feel like a threat is coming from within your own body, your fear becomes inwardly directed. From that point on, it's just a matter of time before that fear grows into a panic attack. Once you have your first panic attack, every other panic attack could be triggered by a mere thought of your inwardly directed fear. Out of blue panic attacks. If you had your panic attack unexpectedly, you may say that it came out of blue. But out of blue doesn't really mean that it came out of nowhere. Most likely, you were so deep in the process that you didn't notice how your exhaustion gradually led you into a panic attack. Panic attack disinformation. The importance of following the vow of silence is that it keeps you away from falling for disinformation about ways to end panic attacks. Panic attacks make you vulnerable, which means that it's easy to fall for quick fix type of promises. However, it's not just the quick fix types that get you nowhere. Perhaps the most destructive of disinformation is the idea that your panic attacks are a result of some unresolved inner conflict. A person who falls for this idea then delves into deep self-analysis, believing that it's the key to recovery. But constant self-analysis can only lead to more anxiety and makes you feel even worse. This is especially problematic for people with analytical brain. Paradoxically, the answer could be found only when you stop looking for it. Panic disorder. Panic attack is a reaction of your body to the exhaustions you have been overloading yourself with, and it manifests through release of adrenaline, which is a perfectly healthy reaction and has no threat to your well-being. However, it's common that people start fearing the adrenaline release by linking it to inwardly directed fears, and form panic disorder. Panic disorder is when you have regular panic attacks. It's a trap you get into by fearing the perfectly safe adrenaline rush and discomfort that comes with it. There are 3 factors that support your panic disorder. Neuroticism. Neuroticism is a personality trait associated with anxiety. Neurotic people tend to give catastrophic interpretation to every situation. Normally, neurotic traits are not noticed until anxiety gets very high. Even though neuroticism is at the core of anxiety disorder, it's a learned behavior and could be changed if a person is willing to work on it. Avoidance behavior. Every behavior that makes you avoid leaving your comfort zone is avoidance behavior. In the case of panic disorder, it's about avoiding the discomfort due to fear of the worst case scenario. The more avoidance behaviors you have, the worse your agoraphobia. Coping strategies. Carrying pills in your pocket just in case, calling someone to feel less anxious, and compulsively checking your pulse are examples of coping strategies. Coping strategies are a good short-term solution, but they quickly lose effectiveness, and in the long run, they benefit panic disorder rather than your recovery. A good rule of thumb to identify a coping strategy is to ask yourself, am I doing this to avoid my anxiety? Panic attack cycle. Here's how panic attack cycle looks like. It starts with an event, which could be either external or internal. Example of external event is this place is too crowded. An example of internal event is I think I'll faint. Event is followed by anxiety, where gas pedal is being pressed and adrenaline is released. After adrenaline is released, we start feeling the symptoms. Discomfort intensifies as your thoughts get more heated, like, that's it, I'm going to die. And then we have a panic. Discomfort reaches its peak and brake pedal is pressed, but expectation of the next panic attack may trigger a series of panic attacks or cause another one later. Interesting to note that if you remove panic from the cycle, you'll get health anxiety, GAD, and OCD instead. How to disrupt the panic cycle? In order to disrupt the cycle, you must interfere as soon as the triggering event takes place. Your initial reaction will be to avoid, suppress, or distract yourself from that triggering thought and to sweep it under the rug. But everything you sweep under the rug has to eventually be dumped in the trash. Therefore, the best approach is to expand on that triggering thought. This is where you must explore that fear in great details, either by writing it down using recommended practices or by sitting there with all the discomfort without trying to resist it in any way. Practice exploring your fears on a daily basis without exceptions for faster results. Agoraphobia. Agoraphobia is an irrational fear of open or public spaces. Essentially, agoraphobia is an indicator of severity of panic disorder. It means that if your panic disorder is bad, your agoraphobia is going to be equally bad. Agoraphobia develops gradually as you create avoidances and coping strategies in your everyday life. Common agoraphobic fears. Fear of having a panic attack around other people and the embarrassment that follows after. Fear of dying from a panic attack due to cardiac arrest, suffocation, or choking. Fear of losing mind or going crazy. Agoraphobia in behavior. Avoidance of places and situations that could cause worry. An example of bad avoidance is when you avoid entering a full bus. An example of severe avoidance is when you find it difficult to leave your home. Confidence when there are people around. An example of bad avoidance is when you can't go shopping with a friend. Example of severe avoidance is when you feel anxious when you are home alone. Safety behavior. You must carry or have something on you that will help you go through an anxious event or situation. And lastly, storming out of an anxious situation and going back to safety. Some other less common examples of avoidance are avoiding certain foods like spicy food, avoiding certain clothing like tight clothing, and avoiding accessories like hand washes. Pretty much everything that gives you a full sense of security by helping you suppress your fear is a type of avoidance.